Is it practical to go back in time and change history? My answer is no. Unfortunately, we don't have any actual factual information or recorded results of what the effects of traveling to the past are. So, for this, to prove my statement, I will follow 3 very good theories of the effects of backwards time travel. Theory 1 states that a traveler at a certain point in time, this is our traveler, the arrow pointing to the point in time where he starts, wants to go back in time to change the other point on this timeline, which is an event that he doesn't like that affected his history in a way he finds unpleasing. So, what our traveler does is he travels back and changes that event. The effects of changing this event rewrites the timeline. A new history is created. So, there is a problem with this timeline, however, or at least with this theory, and it's called the consistency paradox. It lies within that traveler's travel. If that traveler changed the event that caused them to travel back in time, then they would never have had the need to travel back in the first place. So, either one of 2 things could happen, according to scientists. Either one, the traveler would exist as a temporal anomaly, someone who is within a time period they should not be in due to an event that never happened. Or 2, the traveler ceases to exist because an event that never happened led them to change an event, and therefore, if that event that they changed never happened, then they never went back in time to change it, therefore that event remained unchanged, and they're back to square one, back before they traveled. Theory 2 is very similar to Theory 1 in the way that the timeline is set up. You have your traveler, and he wants to go back in time to change an event, so he goes back in time and he changes that event. However, this is where it differs. When he changes that event, instead of altering his own timeline, he actually creates a parallel timeline. In this parallel timeline, there exists him, as he traveled, an alternate version of him. Essentially, he doesn't belong in this timeline, and unless he's content with abandoning his original timeline and whoever he left in that timeline, potentially considering maybe he left his timeline to save those in his original timeline and he wanted to alter events to positively affect them, what he essentially does is he cuts himself off from that timeline and ditches them entirely. Now you might be saying, well, couldn't he just go back in time? Or couldn't he just go back in time and prevent himself from changing that event? And the answer, no, he couldn't. What he ends up doing, if he does prevent that, is that because the event didn't play out like it was supposed to, play out by itself, there is assistance of him stopping himself from creating that new parallel timeline. He creates another timeline where time goes out almost identically to the original timeline, but it is not the same timeline. And there exist 2 versions of him, one pre-travel and one post-travel. He essentially also doesn't belong in this. So unless the traveler is content with living in a timeline that they don't belong, then this is highly impractical. They have no benefit. So this is theory 3. Now, as you see, we have our traveler right here, and he wants to go back like before to change an event. Well, where this differs is that theory 3, it entails something called the bootstrap paradox, also referred to as a causal loop. With a causal loop, what the user of a time travel device does is they go back in time with the intention to change an event, and when they try and attempt to change that event, they actually cause the event that made them go back in time in the first place. So essentially, by going back, they actually cause this event to happen. So, essentially, what happens with the bootstrap paradox is that the future causes the past because the past caused the future to cause the past. Essentially, if one intends to change events within this theory, what they have essentially done is accomplished absolutely nothing. They are back to square one. As soon as they alter an event, it really doesn't positively or negatively affect them. It just causes that event that they went back in time to stop. So essentially, one could call it counterproductive, because what you're going to get is essentially exactly what you started with. Due to the effects of past time travel to change events yielding either neutral or negative effects, I would say that traveling is impractical due to the fact that those traveling, or those traveled for, are not benefited in any way, shape, or form. Therefore, it is a waste of resources to travel to the past to change events because you simply cannot change what has happened.